This is the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast.
Oh no! We suck again!
I'm getting confused. What game are you calling?
I'm calling both games.
It is caught by Kelsey! Touchdown! Kansas City!
I need 3 of those things, baby. We ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. You like that? You like that? I like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast. I am Ruckus, always causing a ruckus.
And I am Spendus the Menace.
And on this episode, we'll be going over the starting lineup, the good, bad, and ugly Eastwood segment, the high heat, the color commentary, and our Sunday of the week. Alright, Spendus, how are we doing?
We're doing good. If you're catching us on here, we have survived another solar eclipse. Not in totality, and not a total Mitsubishi.
Well, my eyes are burning still in my retinas. My eyes!
Did you not catch what I said there right at the beginning before you had gone through that, right? Or right at the end? It's like, and not a total Mitsubishi.
The total Mitsubishi, I don't get the joke, but...
Not a total Mitsubishi. You didn't realize that a Mitsubishi had a car named the Eclipse?
Oh. See, that went right over my head. Thanks,
wow. Oh my. Before we get too far off the rails, let's get into the transaction log of our transaction log of our starting lineup. And we will start with some hoops in talking about the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. 13 players throughout international basketball, women's basketball, men's basketball, coaches, and contributors have been inducted. Notable names this year include Doug Collins, who was the coach for the Bulls during the early Jordan, or actually just before Jordan won the titles. Doug Collins was the coach. Phil Jackson eventually was the one that got the Bulls there, but Doug Collins was the head coach of the Bulls right around the time when Jordan dropped the 63 against the Celtics. Michael Cooper, a member of the Showtime Lakers, more so known for being the defensive stalwart shooting guard to go along with Magic, Kareem, and Worthy. Jerry West, the Logo, for the third time. This is unprecedented for very many people. Some good amount of people will get in once for sure. Maybe even twice if you're a part of an Olympic team. But Jerry West not only did this as his star player in 79, made it in with the 1960 Dream Team. Or not Dream Team, but the National Basketball Team. The Dream Team was 92. But Jerry West this year gets in as a contributor and executive during his time with the Lakers in the three-peat with Kobe and Shaq. And then, of course, his title-building roster with that dynasty known as the Golden State Warriors were what led him there. And then the two major notes, Portland Trail Blazers coach and famously a champion with the Detroit Pistons in Mr. Big Shot, Chauncey Billups. And then Vince Carter, has made it into the Hall of Fame. I'm sure there's probably a few of these names here of note that really stick out to you, Ruckus. Probably more so Carter and Billups than anything else.
Yep, I always used to pronounce my name, or whenever I would play basketball with people and they didn't know what my name was, I'd be like, Carter, like Vince Carter. And then they'd be like, hey, I got you. Anyways, yeah.
But
Chauncey Billups for sure, because I remember him in the, what was that game called? Where, it was like a one-on-one video game. And
I mean, you had the NBA Ballers franchise. I think he might have been on the cover of... I don't think it was I think Chauncey Billups was on the cover of one of them, but I think the
Stephon Marbury was on the
Stephon Marbury was one of them, but I think Chauncey Billups also was.
He was on NBA Ballers Phenom.
Yeah.
I'm looking
he was
at it
the
right
cover
now.
athlete. Yeah, he was the cover athlete of Phenom. But Stephon Marbury was the first one. Stephon Marbury was definitely the first one.
Man, I need to get back into that one. And then they had Dwight Howard as the one on Xbox 360. The chosen one.
Yep. But I will never forget Vince Carter, of course, in international play, jumping over a 7-footer to dunk a ball. And then the 2000 slam dunk contest, where, of course, he did the between the legs. He had the first elbow in the rim honey dip. Although Blake Griffin did that one better, where he tossed it off the backboard and straight up went for the honey dip. But Carter did it first, as far as the NBA dunk contest. So, I mean, I definitely would put Vince Carter as far as, dunk contest dunkers. He's within my top 5 all time.
It's over, ladies and gentlemen. It's over.
And Kenny Smith still says this to this day because of Vince Carter. That becomes such a notable thing because of that. Because of 2000. I mean, now all of a sudden, we got everybody dunking over Shaq. As that has been a common mainstay that has been so overplayed. And I think the dunk contest is slowly starting to phase itself out. And I think Vince Carter is one of the last of the few true greats that we had in really the dunk contest era. Some of my players that definitely make my top 5 there would be Dominique, Jordan, Aaron Gordon, and Zach LaVine. Definitely have that be relevant. I mean, Dwight Howard and Nate Robinson for a period. But I don't think very many dunk contest eras will be topped if you say the words Michael Jordan and Dominique Wilkins in the mid to late 80s. If you watch one of those back, Ruckus, and I advise you do it, you have two dunkers really in their prime of their career, or at least the early younger stages of their career in one and in the prime of another, that just would push each other. I mean, we saw that with Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine the one year, where they were bringing hoverboards and stuff like that. No, Jordan and Wilkins were doing that mostly without props. Without props. I don't think they were requiring extra people. They were just pure dunkers going at it. And I miss that.
Me too, to be honest with you. I also feel like they need to like rejuvenate it back to the old school ways because of the fact that like it just feels like they're trying to remake Call of Duty or mix it up in the pot, but they mixed it too much. You know what I mean? Like
The wheel is they're spending too much time trying to reinvent the wheel.
yeah. I agree.
Meanwhile, the 3-point contest has evolved in such a healthy way that it truly is the best event of the All-Star weekend. No questions asked. Why? Because generally the best shooters are going to want to compete. Either that, or you're getting really good shooters no matter what. You're getting great shooters, or at least great potential shooters that can score in multiple different ways, but the scorers are wanting to shoot. There's a difference. Like, dunking is such an explosive art, while shooting is such a measured and calculated art that's a matter of timing.
Yeah.
I think that's why the 3-point contest is becoming more of a premier event than the dunk contest right now.
Well, I think also the problem with the dunk contest is you'll put like a bunch of unproven people in it and expect people to be like, okay, well, these guys are probably pretty good. Like, the only one that you really know nowadays is Matt McClung. And maybe, like, they had, like, the brother of, Tippin.
Yeah, Toppin. Yeah, Obi Toppin's younger brother. They're having to resort to the going down into the bottom of the barrel of the G League just to fill a dunk contest now.
I think what they should do is have like NBA superstars that we actually know that can dunk, like that are well known, rather than like these G League guys or just randoms. Because like I didn't know most of those people, and it just felt like it was like a filler. Whereas with the 3-point contest, it's like, okay, these guys are like legit 3-point shooters, like Steph Curry, Dame Lillard,
Tyrese Halliburton, Spida competed this year. You've had Desmond Bain compete in the past. You've had Devin Booker compete in the past. You've had Clay compete. Like, you've had great shooters compete in the 3-point contest in the past. And they generally, for the 3-point shootout, they try and get some of the best players 3-point percentage-wise throughout the league. They get some of the best 3-point shot percentages during the regular season and put them in. And I wouldn't be surprised if they even continue with some of the charitable stuff with Curry and Ionescu next year. Make it bigger. Bring Caitlin Clark over. Bring a couple other deadly shooters from the WNBA and do the same challenge. Do the same challenge as last year. Because that was probably one of the most exciting things to watch. Because these WNBA players were shooting with their basketballs from the NBA's range and keeping up with the actual NBA players.
All right.
The next one here, we sadly got to talk about a related thing with LeBron James. But in this case, it's Bronny James has declared for the NBA draft with the option to withdraw and enter the transfer portal should he choose to. He can withdraw a maximum number of twice. But in this situation, should he choose to withdraw, he has then entered his name into the transfer portal which means he will not be playing for the University of Southern California next season. Or at least he has the potential to play elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea for him to be going for the draft, but that's just me.
I think it's a testing of the water because he was such a he was a hyped up prospect, maybe overhyped.
Well, if he did
in entering his freshman year, he was super overhyped as a prospect.
Well, you got to also
deals with
consider...
a cardiac arrest issue,
yeah.
So he now has to deal with a clearness to play, like a fitness to play at the NBA level. And if he even fails that, he can withdraw his name and go back to college and then improve that to try and see if he can make it again.
Yeah, I was about to say before I interrupted you that he is probably still dealing with that cardiac arrest issue, like the lingering effects of it, and I think that really sidelined him a little bit because he was mainly coming off the bench, and I don't know if that was because they were trying to make sure that he didn't die on them.
Oh yeah, he eventually started. He eventually started games.
But even then, like, when he was on the field, you would barely notice he was there when I would watch highlights, and he was just kind of testing the waters a little bit, it seemed. So, like, I don't know. I think it's a bad idea for him to declare for the draft. I think if he does transfer somewhere, it'll probably be on a either contending team or a team that's still close to home for with LeBron and whatnot, because like that was pretty much why he went to USC, was so that he could be closer to family, I assume.
I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves the state of California. I wouldn't be surprised if this decision ultimately leads him maybe to an Ohio State. I don't think he'll go to like any of like the blue bloods. He's not going to go to Duke. He's not going to go to Kentucky. He's not going to go to Kansas. He's not going to go to UConn. None of those. He's not going to go to North Carolina. I don't think he goes to Izzo in Michigan State. I think that ultimately
St. John's?
The first major... You said St. John's?
Yeah, with Rick Pitino.
Patino? No. I don't think he goes to Patino either.
Patino's like, I didn't want him anyways.
I think the first major choice is that if he's leaving the Pac-12, I mean, but USC's leaving the Pac-12 anyway and going to the Big Ten. So I think that transferring into a Big Ten school would be a very interesting move for one Bronny James. And honestly, I think that the problem is that LeBron has a huge tie to the state of Ohio. But I also could think that Bronny still could go to a smaller school than Ohio State and still have a benefit. Should he choose to? But I think the number one choice that I think he probably would have should he withdraw, I think he becomes a Buckeye.
That makes sense.
Just because of LeBron's ties to Ohio. I'll let you go ahead and work up a little bit more of the back half of this, and then we'll talk more content activity.
All right. So I'm gonna stay in basketball for a quick second as John Calipari finalizes a deal to coach for the University of Arkansas whilst leaving Kentucky. And then here we go with baseball. The one little news of baseball: Steven Strasburg retires at 35 after a very historic career, getting a World Series championship and just pitching his heart out until he couldn't anymore.
I'm gonna stop you here for a second because I do have something on this. When Steven Strasburg was a rookie, I did get to watch him pitch once. It was against the Mets. It was a 4th of July game. well, really July 3rd, but it was a 4th of July weekend game. And I was about 25 rows from being right there around home plate. I was in the lower reserve. This man's fastball at the time, electric. His changeup when he entered the league was in the lower 90s. So all of these modern day flamethrowers that you're seeing with these 90 mile an hour breaking pitches, Strasburg technically had them. You noticed his speed came down after the Tommy John, and he threw with much more control. But I do remember that because Strasburg looked great, got hurt, still dealt with some injury issue then. But ultimately, I think it was the injuries and the issues, even with post Tommy John, that I think was what caused him to retire this early. I think the injuries piled up. He did win the World Series MVP in 2019, bringing the Nationals their first World Series. I believe he will be a member of a Nationals Ring of Honor should the Nationals start one or have one already. I am a firm believer that he will be a part of that, along with Scherzer, along with Rendon, and I would hope they would give something to Howie Kendrick as well. Especially because those four were some of the key names that led the Nationals to their first World Series.
Yep.
And Strasburg had a good career. Not Cooperstown worthy, but I think Nationals Ring of Honor worthy.
All right. And then to finish it off, Stephon Diggs was traded from Buffalo to the Houston Texans,
allowing him to become a free agent next season.
And then
because I believe they're saying that Houston is going to allow Stephon Diggs to be a free agent next year.
And then Patriots re-signed Kyle Duggar, their safety, to a 4-year deal. All right, Spennis, I'll let you get going on the activity.
So here is our activity lineup coming up. We will have March to October this week. Our opening episodes will be on Thursday for me with the Cleveland Guardians, and then Ruckus will have Friday with the Kansas City Royals. Some craziness is going on and a little bit of busyness on my end next week. So we are anticipating no episode for you guys next week. Just life is happening over here. We've got a little bit of chaos potentially going on here. I kind of want to just say no episode. Give us a week off to kind of add some more fuel to the fire and give us maybe more to work with, along with also being able to accommodate for any extra things that go on. However, MTOs, our March to October project, will stay on schedule. So you will get an episode from each of us on the 18th and 19th. Episode 2s will be up at their scheduled release point. And bonus content from either side may be possible if something opens up. The reason why I say may is we may have something that's worthwhile for it. We may not. Especially because we have the draft a couple of days or a couple of weeks away. There's still some smoke and mirrors going on. We don't know what's going on with just about anything. Anything involving that. So I wouldn't expect anything for that this week, guaranteed, but it's possible. And now we move on to our Eastwood segment. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the spaghetti western.
All right. So for our good this week, I had. Well, go ahead, Spanos. This is yours. Sorry.
Well, I think we both kind of had something with this. I mean, the closing games of March Madness, especially on the women's side, we had some very, very interesting. Had some very interesting turn of events. We'll get a little bit more into that in our next segment, which will be the high heat. But the women's championship, especially those final games, especially that Final Four game with Iowa and UConn and how that one finished out.
Yeah.
That was super impressive. But I think the good here being this is that the women's tournament content delivered. And you definitely could tell, especially there was a huge degree of mutual respect for Caitlin Clark by Dawn Staley, the South Carolina coach, after the game, and talking about the mantle that Caitlin Clark carried on her Caitlin Clark had carried on her shoulders to pretty much feel like women's basketball, especially with the high-profile names that were playing extremely well, being back. Like, women's basketball became relevant. And speaking of some other games of March Madness, we currently are live with, or at least recording this during the live run of UConn and Purdue for the men's national championship.
Yes, sir.
At this point right now, with about 11 and a half to go in the first half, UConn is up by 2.
All right. The bad this week. We have injuries galore with starting pitching for the major leagues, including Spencer Strider having to get reconstruction surgery on his UCL ligament, and then Shane Bieber having to get about the same surgery on his elbow with the UCL, and surgery early on into the season, missing the rest of the season most likely for both pitchers early. Alright, and then the downright ugly in sports this week is the breakup between the A's and the Oakland Coliseum. They moved to Sacramento next year, and this will be the last season for the A's till the Vegas move. So, this will be, I think this is a good breakup for the A's in the Coliseum. It's been long overdue for the A's to get either a new stadium or move somewhere else, because the Coliseum, to say as a relic is probably giving it too much praise. I would say just kind of an object that is just still erected to this day in Oakland next to the Oracle Arena. That's all I'm gonna say. The Coliseum was kind of, it showed its age.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely showed its age across multiple sports, because not only did the Athletics compete in it, so did the Raiders when they were there. So I think that although it sucks that there is no more baseball in Oakland, I think that the turnouts for Oakland were nowhere near as impressive, but not as bad as other teams in the league. especially on the other side of the country, right there in the Southeast in Florida. I think Miami and Tampa Bay were probably dealing with worse attendance than the A's. It's just I think the A's were dealing with more needing to sell and relocate to get out of those regions, while Miami and Tampa Bay could have lively baseball combinations, but the Trop is a terrible stadium. And the Miami Marlins, although right now they are a terrible baseball team, they are a team that it's just a stadium that looks like it has no life.
I think the Marlins Stadium hasn't had life since they took away that fish relic. Whenever they changed the name of the stadium to Lone Depot Park.
Oh, but I'm saying even that, like, it was more active, and I believe the Marlins never won a World Series in Lone Depot Park. Both of those were done in Pro Player Stadium. So honestly, I think just Miami has dealt with more of the curse of changing stadiums in really not having very much of a form. While in Oakland, it's just they just can't market-wise keep up.
Yeah.
I think Oakland, like the Bay Area, has been dominated by San Francisco, not Oakland. Oakland is generally a solid team right there in the Bay, but the Bay Area does not have the same type of appeal on the Oakland side as it does the San Francisco side. Too many people are wanting to be up there. So that's why the Raiders relocated. That's why the A's are getting ready to go. Golden State went from Oakland to San Francisco. So now the section of Oakland in the Bay Area now is going to be just like, now is going to have the same number of sports teams as the first letter in it. And O, which basically in this case is 0. We ready to talk hoops, or at least some more hoops.
We playing basketball. We love that basketball. Okay, I'm done making cringy. All right. Yeah, let's get into it.
Because I thought you were going to be going along with the talking about basketball is my favorite sport. I like the way they dribble up and down the court just like I'm the king on a microphone. So is Dr. J and Moses Malone.
Damn.
And that
okay,
is
spitting bars.
That is actually the original. Like, you know how Like Mike had Bow Wow do it? No, the ones that I did was actually the original Curtis Blow lyrics. And he did this back in 84. Where he talked about Dr. J, Moses Malone, talked about Earl the Pearl Monroe, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Tiny Archibald, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So he had a whole bunch of those notable things while Bow Wow and Mike was doing more of a Jordan-esque one to try and modernize it. Mm-hmm. No, I think the original is better. And it should have never have been messed with. However, we now of course, have the national championship going on. I still have UConn in the national title as far as winning the national title. Just under 7 to go. It is currently tied at 23 aside between Purdue and UConn. Edie right now has 14, while UConn has had it spread out with Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton with 7. With 7 as far as players on the that were starting. Zach Edey is a freak of nature. He's big. I think he could have a good transition in the NBA, but I think it's going to come down to really he's needed as a center. I just think he's a little more of an old school center in terms of how big he is, as opposed to now these centers who can stretch the floor. And Edey does not take a 3. Just does not shoot threes. Meanwhile, guys like Wembanyama, Karl Anthony Towns, those guys will shoot threes, so it's going to be interesting to see how he transitions. However, if UConn wins, I will have gotten my men's tournament correct from national championship from the first round of the national championship since 2009 when I picked North Carolina. I have already clinched the men's bracket victory about a week ago.
About a week ago.
Actually, I think I did that. Actually, I think I clinched it in the Sweet 16, secured it in the Elite 8, and had it going into the Final Four, as I already had more points prior to Ruckus's max out, or greater points than Ruckus's max out. However, the women's bracket in the Elite 8, Ruckus cut my lead from 190 down to 110 as Iowa defeated LSU. Both South Carolina and Iowa won in the Final Four. As Iowa won a 2-point game against UConn following an illegal screen with seconds remaining, and then Caitlin Clark throwing a ball off the backside of Paige Beckers to try and metagame the clock. And then South Carolina, of course, had cruised earlier in the night by 19 against NC State. So it came down to the wire. One game between Ruckus and I as to who would win the women's bracket. I chose the South Carolina Gamecocks. Ruckus chose the Iowa Hawkeyes. And the winner is me. As South Carolina defeated Iowa in 87-75 in the national championship. And I have swept both bracket challenges. Ruckus may have won the football season, but when it comes to the hoop, and I scored over 1,000 as I finished out with a plus 430 in the women's bracket. The men's bracket is still going on, and I actually broke 1,000 there as well, or that I would break 1,000 if I get it. I'm at plus 300 in the men's, and it would be at plus 620 should I get UConn right. But although college basketball aside, we now bring you to, we are wrapping up the NBA season, as most teams will have at this point 3 to 5 games remaining. And all 20 teams that will remain have been decided. So the field here at 20 teams going into the postseason is complete. And there are 2 teams that are also already set in their position, it looks like, for the play-in, as the 9th and 10th seeds are secured in the East, as there are not enough games remaining for the Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks to catch up to the Miami Heat at 8. So where do we want to... Do you want me to just continue with the Eastern Conference there, Ruckus?
I guess. I'm not really... I don't really get super invested into the NBA until they actually start playing defense. That's just me, but
yeah,
go for it.
I mean, that's just there, and we are now just about maybe a week and a half away from that. And the first game, and the 4 teams that are currently sitting in the play-in, 2 of them have already secured their place. The others, on the other hand, could jump up into the top 6 and move teams down. So at the 10 seed, and they could move up to the 9, because those 2 teams are battling for position. Those are the Chicago Bulls and the Atlanta Hawks. The teams jockeying around in seeds 2 through 8, all separated by 4 games. And we will start at the bottom here with the teams that are needing to climb. That is the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers. The teams currently outside the play-in at the moment, as of tonight, are the Indiana Pacers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, New York Knicks, Orlando Magic, Milwaukee Bucks, and Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have the best record in the NBA at 62-16. Playoff berth was clinched by the Bucks. So the Bucks are guaranteed in no matter what. And the play-in berths were clinched by the Bulls and the Hawks. Over to the other side of the country and the Western Conference. The Houston Rockets were recently eliminated due to not having enough games to catch up. So now the 10 teams are set as far as who is in the playoffs. However, the play-in has a little bit more competition going on, as there are now 5 teams jockeying around for 4 spots. The 4 teams that are currently sitting in the play-in, starting from the bottom, are the Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers, Sacramento Kings, and now the New Orleans Pelicans have fallen, because they have been passed in a tiebreaker over the by the Phoenix Suns with 4 games remaining. Though the Phoenix Suns are just hanging on to the 6th spot, you now have the Dallas Mavericks and Los Angeles Clippers with potential to clinch, along with the Oklahoma City Thunder, Denver Nuggets, and Minnesota Timberwolves at the top, who have already punched their tickets into the playoffs. These play-ins, I think, are going to be some of the most energetic basketball that we're going to see, especially what it's looking like in the West, as now you have Zion Williamson, Domantas Sabonis, LeBron James, and Stephen Curry. The play-in is going to be very interesting on both sides. I'm excited to see what kind of unfolds at this point. And anything can happen. As the playoffs have shown, play-in teams can make some noise, and especially even stun a potential number one seed that we'd be thinking, oh, they're going to go to the finals. Because basketball is that type of sport. And even though we are and I think we now transition from the from the closing games of one regular season to the opening games of another regular season. As we go 3 series in our color commentary.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The first question, what teams are we considering with the impressive tag so far?
Well, let's see here in the standings here for the MLB.
Teams that are playing impressively.
I would have to say impressive teams currently right now. I would have to say the Pittsburgh Pirates. Last year they were in a good run like this. The New York Yankees really surprised us. The same with the Red Sox. The Orioles, they're doing all right. They're in 3rd place in the AL East. The AL Central has the Guardians in 1st place with the Royals in 2nd place. I'm still a little doubtful because after April last season or a couple seasons ago, it turned into a huge flop. And then the Tigers, I'm kind of surprised they're doing a little bit better than the Twins currently. White Sox, not surprised there. They're 1-9. The Rangers are on the top of their division in the AL West, and the Angels are right underneath them. The Astros are 3-7. Same with the Athletics, but they'll probably come back to life here soon. The Braves are number 1 in their NL East, with the Phillies underneath them. And then you have the NL Central with the Pirates, like I just said, and then the Cubs trailing ahead underneath them. And then to finish it out, the NL West, Dodgers, no surprise here, are leading in that division with the Padres in 2nd. And the Diamondbacks, they need to bounce back if they want to repeat to go to the World Series. I mean, it's obviously very, very early in the season, but they had a really good start to the year last year that really helped boost their confidence. What do you think, Spennis?
I am impressed with what is potentially going to be a very entertaining race in division-wise in baseball. And I'm going to say it right now. This is a shocker. Because normally we would say the major entertaining race is the AL East. Not right now. At this juncture, it is the NL Central. None of the teams in it are below 500. The Cardinals are at 5-5. The Pirates just raised the Jolly Roger again in a matter of a few compared to when we started recording to right now. The Pirates raised the Jolly Roger. The Reds picked up a win over the Brewers. it is a highly entertaining race. I think that, and if this holds, it is probably going to be the most entertaining race we have all year long. And I think we are going to constantly be talking about it, having about maybe 2 or 3 teams, possibly in the NL Central, making the playoffs. Looking to see if things are going to sustain itself. It gets exciting. The disappointment side, though, I look at right now what is potentially the state of, I'm going to say the state of the NL or the AL West. As I think that there are just some teams who we thought would be performing better, but aren't. I even could say the early runs of the Minnesota Twins in the AL Central. I thought they'd have a little more control than what they have right now. I think the Guardians are impressive right now, especially with losing Shane Bieber and still winning games. The Cleveland Guardians, and trust me, I feel like this now that I'm playing them in the March to October. It's the art of preventing a fire sale. And they're just the masters of doing it.
Yeah, they never really do anything
for
about
about 2 or 3 years now that would just, they're going to blow it up. They're going to blow it up. They're going to stick the dynamite in and blow it up. Why is this not exploding? Did we throw in a blank? I'm drawing this blank as to why this has not exploded yet. Just because they play like they want to avoid a fire sale.
Maybe they have that evil lady that's owning the team, and they're trying to prove that they can win so they don't have to move out like in Major League.
As much as you would say that with Major League being a potential concept for this, we don't have a Willie Mays Hayes or a Pedro Serrano, but the Guardians are just, there's something about them just being able to, like, they're not dealing with relocation. They just have not blown up the team in terms of trading their best players away. I mean, they sent away Lindor, but that was an off-season deal. Like, they're not a deadline. Like, they're not blowing up at the deadline.
They usually only deal their players in the off-season rather than doing it
at the deadline.
Or any other time, yeah.
Yeah, because generally your deadline deals are just kind of deadline deals. Like you're more so picking up players at a rental at that point. And just Cleveland hadn't had any. So the question now we have for certain things, we're going to do a little bit of fire away here. The question, with these teams that are overachieving right now, is the pace they are on sustainable? The Pittsburgh Pirates sitting at 9-2 after raising the Jolly Roger against the Detroit Tigers today. Are the Pittsburgh Pirates at a 9-2 record sustainable?
They've got a long ways to go. I mean, I see the trend going downwards here soon if they don't keep up what they need to keep up with. They got Jack Sawinski and a few other players, but they just need to stay healthy and keep going.
Jack Sawinski, Brian Hayes. I think it's Brian Reynolds they have. They've got a good core. It's just a good core that kind of has a little bit of a pressure to perform. They're doing well now. But the biggest thing that we really want to see with Pittsburgh is just don't plateau. It's just don't let the performances plateau.
Yeah.
They have a bad habit of letting a stretch plateau and then plummet. Whether it be major injuries or just players not performing at the ability that they need to. So I would say as long as the Pirates avoid a stretch of plateauing, I believe it is sustainable. The Guardians at 8-2, even with them losing Shane Bieber.
What was that to see? I don't know how to feel about the Guardians right now. I don't know what to say. That's all I'm going to say. Let's move on.
I think we're at the point now where they might be at a point of no Bieber, no problem. But the pitching has to sustain itself without Shane Bieber. If the pitching does, I think this is sustainable. And if the pitching kind of can keep the runs down, the offense gets a little bit going, it's sustainable. If they don't, I could see this going left in a hurry. The Red Sox at 7-3. I'm just going to say the answer here. No. No, that is not sustainable. Tyler O'Neill is not going to be raking like this all year long. Even though he's in an MLB leading 5 home runs, I just don't expect that breakneck pace of home runs to be something that is going to sustain the Red Sox, and I think starting pitching is going to become an issue. This is not sustainable.
Yeah, I can see that not being a thing. Tigers.
The Tigers at 6-3.
I don't think it's sustainable.
No.
Let's see.
No,
the Royals.
The Royals at 6-4.
I think we need to wait a month. That's what I'm gonna say, because I don't know how sustainable they are. Their bullpen's a little shaky at times, but the starting rotation is seeming to gel together with Waka, Lugo, Cole Reagans, Brady Singer, and Alec Marsh. They're looking good, but they need to sustain it. And have they shown that yet? Well, kinda, but we'll have to see what they do long term.
You said this wrong with Michael Waka. It's Michael Waka, 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 Waka.
But yeah, I think the Royals, they just need. I want to see a month of this consistency, and then another month, and then another month before I go praising the Royals right now, because I don't know. We'll have to see. Angels at 5-4.
No.
Hell no.
No. Trout is not going to be raking like this all year.
He's going to be flopping out of the water. He's going to be a fish out of water.
I mean, I'm going to say for the Royals at 6-4, as long as Bobby doesn't end up at wit's end,
Stop it.
I think the Royals will be fine.
Stop it.
They could be fine, but I think that they need to... It's got to come down to the rotation. It's got to come down to the pitching for them. If they're pitching well, it sustains itself so long as Bobby Witt is hitting. Now, for the teams that are kind of not doing so well, we have 3 answers for this. Rough terrain, flat tire, or the wheels just never made it on. The Diamondbacks at 4-6. Are they just on rough terrain? Has the lineup suffered a flat tire? Or have the wheels just never made it on?
I'm gonna say rough terrain. They have a target on their back from what happened last season, and a lot of people are trying to figure them out, or have probably figured them out.
I'm going to be in agreement with you in saying rough terrain, because despite them having a very, very solid start with playing the Rockies, the Diamondbacks have lost 5 of their last 6 in playing the Yankees and the Braves back-to-back, losing 2 out of 3 to New York and getting swept by Atlanta. They're playing against the Rockies now and they're up 4-3. I think they just suffered a very, very rough terrain in dealing with 2 very highly talented teams back to back. So yes, I am going to say rough terrain for the Arizona Diamondbacks. The San Diego Padres.
Um,
And their record is 5-7. Granted that they played 2 games against the Dodgers in Korea.
I think they have rough terrain. Just straight up, like, I mean, yes, you lost like a few of your pitchers in either free agency or tried to trade for new ones, like Dylan Cease. But you also lost Juan Soto in a trade to the Yankees. So I don't know what to say. I don't want to say flat tire because they haven't really had anybody get hurt. It's more just the fact that I think the talent just isn't the same as it was last year or the year before that. Like, they need to get better. They need to get on the right track. What do you think?
I'm going to say probably... I think I'm going to say rough terrain as well, because they've really been battling head-to-head with the San Francisco Giants to start the year, where they have pretty much been 3-4. 3 of their 4 wins are against the Giants. So they have a lot of divisional races that have or divisional games that have had a lot of intensity. They also currently right now are playing the Cubs, who are a solid team and they're up 2, and the Cubs are up 2-0 in the top of the second right now. So I think rough terrain, as far as having a very, very difficult stretch of teams, in having the Giants, the Cardinals, the Giants, and now starting a series with the Cubs, I'm in agreement with you here saying rough terrain for the Friars.
Yep.
The Astros at 3-7.
I think the Astros have I don't know what the hell's going on with their bullpen. I only know this because I have Ryan Presley and Josh Hader in my same bullpen on the fantasy for my fantasy league, and they both keep getting rocked up. I don't know if it's just the confidence or just a bad or a case of bad luck, but it's looking kind of rough on the bullpen, even though they literally gave Hader a huge contract. I think they can come back from this. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. I think they have a flat tire, though, when it comes to their bullpen. Because, like I said, Presley, which has been proven to be a decent bullpen guy that they need, and then adding Hader really added the icing on the cake. But right now, it doesn't look like that icing ever got on the cake.
I'm going to say for me, I think the Astros' issue, though I think the real answer here is probably flat tire, I think for them, they just didn't. I think for the start, I think they underfueled. Because you've got Kendall Graveman injured, 60-day IL. Lance McCullers, 60-day IL. Jose Urquidy, 15-day IL. Then you have Luis Garcia, 60-day IL. Justin Verlander, 15-day IL. Framber Valdez, he's day-to-day, but may possibly run into a stint in the 15-day IL if not careful. I don't think the wheels never necessarily made it on, but I think that the Astros kind of ran into a little bit of a fuel issue in getting started. They want to win game. Like, I think they're pushing themselves to try and win games. They had a little bit of sketchy terrain, also getting swept by the Yankees, winning 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays, and they're pretty much a step behind in a 4-game set with Texas, although they are currently leading 10-5 to try and split that. So I think that the Astros just kind of got to a very... They came in probably with not enough fuel to get started, is where I kind of sit with them. But ultimately, based on these answers here that we have, I am saying flat tire.
Yeah.
The Seattle Mariners at 4-6.
I think they have a little bit. I think they've had a little bit of rough terrain. Cause, well, I mean, they just kind of exist. They're not like they don't kind of exist kind of like the Angels as far as just saying that they're a baseball team and slapping a logo on it. I think the Mariners just need more time in the oven. And I'm just gonna say they had a little bit of rough terrain.
I think I'm also in agreement here with rough terrain. Just simply, you split a series with Boston, you lose 2 or 3 to the Guardians, you lose 2 or 3 to the Brewers, and you're kind of behind the 8 ball on the Blue Jays. I think that they just kind of... I think for the Mariners, it might be just an issue of they just didn't start off the blocks well. Like how you know how in track and field where you're on the blocks, on your mark, get set, go, they just did not get an explosive start or jump off the blocks. You didn't get as much out of it as you wanted to start the season. I think the real answer here, yes, is rough terrain, but I think for them it's definitely a slow start just simply because they haven't gotten the rhythm has not hit yet.
Yeah.
The next one here is the Twins at 3-4.
The Twins, I think they so I feel like they kind of have a flat tire with Correa. But also because you have inconsistency of health with Byron Buxton, and also a little bit of inconsistency.
Lewis is hurt. Johan Duran, their closer, is in the 15-day IL right now. You've got a bunch of like minor injury. Royce Lewis is on the 10-day right now.
Yep.
As well. So the Twins have not had as much of their firepower as they would have liked. But I also feel at the same time the schedule that they've had minus the Royals has been a little rough themselves. I think they kind of hit a major, like, I think they more so just kind of took a little bit of a wall scraper. Or they kind of got pushed into the wall. Because they have they lost 2 games to the Guardians. They had a game postponed. They just lost to the Dodgers. And they play and they're in a series with the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, it's kind of customary that they're going to whoop up on you.
Yeah. And then we're still talking Phillies, right?
Yes, the Phillies at 4-5.
Yeah, I think the Phillies are more of a later in the season type team that actually gets hot and gets on a roll. Usually around this time they are fairly I guess you could say lukewarm at best. I think they had a little bit of rough terrain at the start, but we'll see how things go. Marlins at 1-10.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I agree with rough terrain on the Phillies. It is smoothing out a little bit with taking 2 of 3 from the Nationals. So I think they're starting to find their stride. And they're up 4-3 right now in the top of the 10th with the Cardinals. So I think if they hang on here, they'll get to 5-5. I think the terrain is starting to smooth out.
Yeah. Marlins at 1-10. I think the wheels never made it on. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. The wheels just...
They let the bolts at home for the tires. They were just like, oh, shit. where we put them?
But they started with a massive flat tire as well, with Sandy Alcantara still being on the 60-day IL. And then Yuri Perez also on the 60-day IL. And then Edward Cabrera on the 15-day. This is more of a sign of the wheels just never making it on. But they started with a really bad flat tire before the season ever began. And I think the White Sox might be the same way. The wheels just never made it on. Luis Robert is now on the 10-day IL as well. Eloy's on the 10-day IL. Stassi's on the 10-day IL. So they've just had
was looking rough.
Yeah, I mean, they're just in a little bit of a but I don't think we're now expecting the White Sox to do much of anything at all.
I don't know either, to be honest with you.
The wheels just never made it on. The only game they've won was a game against Atlanta. That's it.
Yep. All right.
And I don't think we're going to see very many more. Are there any impressive stats that we really need to keep an eye on at this moment?
It's still very early.
I think it's still early, but seeing 3 players right now at 400 and a couple of others kind of still hanging around is kind of par for the course. Mookie Betts and Tyler O'Neill both at 5 home runs. But
Luke
Bryce
Weaver's
Terang stealing 7 bases already. There's going to be some good stolen base numbers again this year. Garrett Crochet with 21 strikeouts. I think we've got ourselves a very interesting year, and there's still a lot of pitchers that have no ERA. So we got ourselves some fun. I think it's still a little early. I don't think we start looking at more impressive stats maybe until May. But there's a couple of things to keep an eye on.
Former Royal Luke Weaver is the leader in wins right now for the Yankees.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into our sudden duds of the week.
Yep, and I'm sure we've already kind of talked a lot about your wheels never making it on dud.
I'll start my stud first. The Kansas City Royals get their first sweep of the season, starting against the division rival Chicago White Sox, which their wheels were never really on to begin with, but it's still good that we beat them. And then the dud, Marlins record after 10 games sits at 1-9.
All right. I am going to start with my dud, as this is our dummy of the week. And that is Byron Buxton. Yes, the Twins center fielder, for stepping out a little too early from the dugout because they were at American Family Field, and you knew what time it was. It was time for the racing sausages. Buxton's out just a little too far and nearly gets Bratwursted. He nearly was taken out by the Bratwurst in the Racing Sausages event at American Family Field. Why do you even bother? Just read the situation, be aware of your surroundings, or else you are going to get smacked pretty hard and have to miss some time because you got hit by a Bratwurst. A racing Bratwurst, that is. But my stud, and I've got 2. My stud for this week is Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson being able to take part in WWE's biggest show of the year in night 1 of WrestleMania 40 in Philly, helping Rey Mysterio and a returning Andrade get the victory over Rey's son, Dominic Dirty Dom Mysterio, and Santos Escobar in a tag team match, disguising themselves as masked men with luchador masks and putting themselves into a position to help Rey Mysterio win. And the crowd went wild as soon as the luchador masks came off. My honorable mention, again in speaking about women's sports, my honorable mention goes to Sabrina Ionescu as her collaboration in shoe design with Nike to make her signature shoe, the Sabrina 1, has taken crossover appeal in the NBA in leaps and bounds, as a lot of her inspiration into it was designed by the Nike Kobe line, especially the Kobe 5, which she had worn a good amount of her time before getting the signature shoe deal. Players in the NBA went and grabbed it as simply they just want to make it appeal to women's sports. Yeah, this is a women's shoe. And yes, you could adjust the sizes, because I think it's plus like 2.5 for a man to wear for a women's shoe. I think it's like plus a certain amount. Take the standard of the woman's shoe size and add 2.5 or something like that. And that's what you would get with a. I'm not too sure what the proper measurement is, but these men are being able to use a women's signature shoe to show support for support for women's sports, and also because the shoe just looked appealing. Like I've even seen like the colorways and stuff that she has for them and the design of it, and it looks clean. Like, it really does look like a shoe that would get women's basketball players to wear it. And not only women's basketball players to wear it, but now it's looking like it's going to have an appeal to men's basketball players as well. And yes, she did that. Ruckus, go ahead and take us out.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast. I am Ruckus, always causing a ruckus.
And I'm Ruckus the Menace.
Thank you for listening again. This has been a Ruckus and The Menace Sports production. We'll see y'all later.
Deuces. UConn up by 9 right now.
Yep.